She was startled to see an older woman she didn't recognize standing there. "Who are you?" Dorathy asked, looking the woman up and down. The woman didn't respond. She simply continued with her cleaning, ignoring Dorathy completely. Dorathy frowned, very annoyed. "Excuse me, can't you hear me?" she said, raising her voice. "You dirty maid, what's wrong with you? Am I not talking to you?" Once upon a time, in a beautiful and peaceful town called Obiakpo, there lived a happy family. In this family, there was a little boy named Tobe. Tobe was just 5 years old, and he was the only child of Mr. Damien and Mrs. Obianuju. His parents loved him so much because they had waited for many years to have a child. After praying for so long, God blessed them with Tobe, and they cherished him with all their hearts. Tobe's father, Mr. Damien, was a hard-working man. He had a big business where he sold all kinds of goods, and his business was doing very well. He provided everything his family needed. Every day, he would come home with a big smile on his face, carrying treats for Tobe and his wife, Obianuju. Tobe loved his father very much and always looked forward to his return from work because they would play together. Tobe's mother, Mrs. Obianuju, was also a hard-working woman. She owned a beautiful salon where she made people's hair. Her salon was one of the most popular places in Obiakpo because everyone loved the way she styled their hair. Every morning, after making sure Tobe was ready for school, she would go to her salon to work. Tobe would always wave goodbye to his mom with a big smile. As a family, they were very happy. Tobe had everything he needed. He had toys, beautiful clothes, and he went to a good school. Mr. Damien and Mrs. Obianuju made sure their son was happy. They loved each other so much, and they lived peacefully together. One sunny afternoon, Mr. Damien was on his way home after a long day at work. Tobe was playing with his toys, waiting for his father to come back. But something terrible happened that day. Mr. Damien had an accident on the road. The people who saw the accident rushed him to the hospital, but sadly, Mr. Damien did not survive. When the news reached Mrs. Obianuju, she was heartbroken. She couldn't believe that her husband was gone. She cried and cried, wondering how she would raise their little boy, Tobe, all by herself. But Mrs. Obianuju was a strong woman, even though her heart was broken. She knew she had to be strong for her son. After Mr. Damien's death, something even worse happened. His family, who had never really cared much about him or his wife, came to claim everything Mr. Damien owned. They took the house, the cars, and all his money. They even threw Mrs. Obianuju and little Tobe out of their home. They had nowhere to go. But Mrs. Obianuju, being the hard-working woman she was, could not just sit and watch her son suffer. "Mommy, where are we going to stay now?" Tobe asked one evening as they packed their things to leave the house. Mrs. Obianuju knelt down and hugged Tobe tightly. "Don't you worry, my dear. I won't let anything happen to you. I will take care of you, I promise." With that promise, Mrs. Obianuju decided to leave Obiakpo and go back to her hometown called Aani. It was a quiet town, far away from the hustle and bustle of Obiakpo. There, she hoped to start a new life with her son, where no one would bother them. When they arrived in Aani, Mrs. Obianuju worked very hard to set up a new salon. It wasn't easy at first because she had to use the little money she had saved to rent a small place for her business, and a house for them to live in. But slowly, things started getting better. Tobe was enrolled in a new school. It wasn't as big as the one he went to in Obiakpo, but it was a good school. Tobe liked his new teachers and made new friends. He always came home with stories to tell his mom about the fun things they did in school. He loved his new life in Aani because his mother made sure he never lacked anything. "Mommy, I like my new school," Tobe would say with a big smile whenever he came home. "I made new friends today." Mrs. Obianuju would smile back at him, feeling proud. "That's wonderful, Tobe. I'm so happy you like it there." Mrs. Obianuju worked very hard at her new salon. People in Aani soon found out how good she was at making hair, and they started coming to her salon. She would work from morning until evening, making sure that she had enough money to take care of her son. Even though things were tough, she made sure Tobe never missed a meal. He had nice clothes, went to school, and they had a roof over their heads. One evening, after dinner, Tobe and his mom sat together in the living room. Tobe looked at his mother with love in his eyes. He was proud of how hard she worked to make sure they were okay. "Mommy," Tobe said softly, "thank you for taking care of me." Mrs. Obianuju smiled at her son. "Oh, Tobe, it's my job to care for you. I promised your daddy that I would give you the best life, and I won't stop until you are a great man." Tobe nodded. "When I grow up, Mommy, I will become very rich. I'll buy you a big house, and I will take care of you just like you took care of me." His mother's heart swelled with pride. She knew that raising Tobe would not be easy, but she was determined to do her best. "You will do great things, my son," she said, hugging him tightly. "You will go to the university, get a good job, and become a very rich man. I believe in you." Tobe smiled. "I promise, Mommy, I will make you proud." That night, as Tobe lay in bed, he thought about all the things his mother had done for him. He knew that she was working so hard to make sure he had everything he needed, and he promised himself that one day he would repay her by making her proud. From that day on, Tobe worked even harder in school. He wanted to make his mother proud and show her that all her hard work was not in vain. And so, Tobe and his mother continued to live happily in Aani. Even though they had lost Mr. Damien and everything they once had, they had each other. Together, they faced the challenges of life with love, strength, and determination. "Good night, Mommy," Tobe said, snuggling into his bed. "Good night, my dear," Mrs. Obianuju whispered, kissing him on the forehead. "Sleep tight." And with that, Tobe drifted off to sleep, dreaming of all the wonderful things he would do to make his mother proud. Years flew by quickly, and before anyone knew it, Tobe had grown into a tall and handsome young boy. He was now 15 years old and in his final year of high school. Tobe had changed a lot since the days when he was a little boy. But one thing remained the same. He was still the loving and hardworking son that his mother, Mrs. Obianuju, was so proud of. Tobe was not only a good boy at home, but he was also very well behaved in school. His teachers loved him because he was smart and always did his best in his studies. He was polite, respectful, and never got into trouble. Every day, he would come home with stories about how well he was doing in class, and his mother would smile and encourage him to keep working hard. "Tobe, I am so proud of you," Mrs. Obianuju would say, patting his head. "You are doing so well in school. Keep it up, my son." "I will, Mommy," Tobe would always reply with a smile. "I want to make you proud." And make her proud he did. Tobe was not only good at his studies, but he also took part in many activities at school. He played football, He was a member of the school's debate team, and he was always ready to help his classmates with their schoolwork. One sunny afternoon, the long-awaited day arrived. It was Tobe's graduation day from high school. His mother, Mrs. Obianuju, was so excited. She dressed up in her best clothes and wouldn't stop smiling. She was ready to cheer her son on as he received his awards and graduated from high school. When they got to the school, the graduation ceremony was beautiful. There were a lot of people there, including Tobe's classmates, their parents, teachers, and friends. Tobe felt a little nervous, but when he saw his mother waving at him from the crowd, all his worries disappeared. He knew that everything was going to be alright. When it was Tobe's turn to receive his awards, his name was called out, and everyone in the hall clapped for him. Tobe walked up to the stage with a big smile on his face. He received many awards for his hard work in school, including awards for being the best student in his class. But the biggest surprise came at the end of the ceremony. Tobe Damian has been awarded a full scholarship to study abroad, the principal announced. The hall erupted in cheers. Tobe's eyes widened in surprise. He couldn't believe it. He had won a scholarship to study in another country. He quickly looked over at his mother, who had tears of joy running down her face. "Mommy, I got a scholarship," Tobe shouted as he ran to her after the ceremony. "My son, you did it. I am so proud of you," Mrs. Obianuju cried as she hugged him tightly. They went home together, and Tobe could hardly wait to show his mother all the awards he had received. When they got home, Mrs. Obianuju laid out all the awards on the table, and I admired them one by one. "Look at all these awards, Tobe," she said, beaming with pride. "You have worked so hard, and now, look at how far you have come. You have made me so happy. I knew you would do great things. But this scholarship, this is a blessing. I'm so proud of you." Tobe smiled and held his mother's hand. "Thank you, Mommy, but I couldn't have done it without you. You have been my biggest supporter." That night, as they sat together, Mrs. Obianuju couldn't help but both feel happy and a little sad. She was overjoyed that her son had done so well in school, but the thought of him leaving her to study abroad made her heart ache. "Tobe," she began softly, "I'm so happy for you, but I'm also going to miss you so much when you leave." Tobe looked at his mother with love in his eyes. "I will miss you too, Mommy, but I promise I will call you every day. I will tell you everything that is happening, and I won't be gone forever. I will come back home as soon as I can." His mother smiled, wiping away a tear. "I know you will, my son. I just want you to be safe and happy. And remember, no matter where you go, I will always be here praying for you." The next few days were busy as Mrs. Obianuju started helping Tobe pack for his journey abroad. They bought new clothes, shoes, and everything else he would need for his trip. Even though she was sad about him leaving, she couldn't help but feel excited about the new opportunities that awaited him. "Mommy, do you think I will make a new friends there?" Tobe asked one evening as they folded his clothes together. "Of course you will," Mrs. Obianuju replied. "You're a smart and kind boy. People will love you, just like they do here." Tobe nodded, feeling a little more confident. He knew that leaving his mother and the town he had grown up in wouldn't be easy, but he was ready for the adventure. On the day of his departure, they both stood at the airport, holding hands. Tobe looked around the busy people rushing to catch their flight. His heart was racing with excitement, but he could also feel the weight of leaving his mother behind. "Mommy, I will call you as soon as I get there," Tobe promised, giving her one last hug. "I know you will, my son. Mrs. Obianuju replied with a smile. Be careful and always remember who you are. I'm so proud of you. With one final wave, Tobe boarded the plane and took his seat. As the plane took off, he looked out the window and thought about his mother. He was determined to make her proud and show her that all her hard work had paid off. When Tobe arrived in the new country, he was amazed by how different everything was. The streets were bigger, the buildings were taller, and the people were from all over the world. But no matter how new and exciting everything was, Tobe never forgot to call his mother. Hi mommy, I'm here, he said excitedly during his first call home. Everything is so different here, but I'm settling in. Oh, thank God you arrived safely, Mrs. Obianuju said, her voice filled with relief. How do you feel? Have you made any friends yet? Not yet, Mom, but I will, Tobe replied. The people here are nice and the school is amazing. I'm going to work hard, Mommy. I will make you proud. I know you will, his mother said with a smile. And just like that, Tobe's life abroad began. He studied technology and loved every moment of it. He made new friends from different countries, learned new things, and experienced new adventures. But no matter how busy his life got, Tobe always found time to call his mother. Mommy, I met some new friends today, he would say during one of their many calls. We went to the library together and they are really nice. That's wonderful, my son, Mrs. Obianuju would reply. I'm glad you are making new friends. Just remember to stay focused on your studies. I will, Mommy. Don't worry. And guess what? I tried some new food today. It was different, but I liked it. I wish you could taste it too. His mother would laugh, and Tobe would feel happy, knowing that he could still make her smile even from afar. And so, Tobe continued his journey, knowing that no matter how far he was from home, his mother was always close in his heart. After years of hard work and dedication, Tobe finally reached a significant milestone in his life. He had graduated from the university with the best results in technology, a field he had always been passionate about. The graduation day was filled with joy and celebration, not only for Tobe, but also for his mother, Mrs. Obianuju. All her sacrifices and prayers for her son had paid off. Tobe had not only made her proud, but he had also proven to himself that with determination, anything was possible. Before Tobe finished his university studies, he had been awarded another scholarship, this time to do his master's degree at the prestigious Cambridge University in England. It was an opportunity of a lifetime, and without hesitation, Tobe accepted it. He spent 2 more years working hard, learning new things, and growing into a brilliant young man. During those 2 years, he also worked part-time to save up money for his future plans. Finally, the day arrived when Tobe had completed his master's degree. He was now ready to return home to Nigeria and reunite with his beloved mother, who had been eagerly waiting for this day. Tobe couldn't wait to see her again after so many years of being away. As the plane landed at the airport in Nigeria, Tobe's heart filled with excitement. He stepped off the plane, holding his luggage and looking around for the familiar face of his mother. And there she was, standing in the crowd with the biggest smile on her face. Mrs. Obianuju had come to the airport with a bouquet of flowers in her hands and the warmest expression of pride and love. Tobe, she called out, waving her hand excitedly. Mommy, Tobe called back, rushing towards her. The moment they saw each other, they embraced tightly. Tears of joy filled Mrs. Obianuju's eyes as she hugged her son, whom she hadn't seen in years. My son, you did it. You have made me so proud, Mrs. Obianuju said, her voice trembling with emotion. Tobe smiled, wiping away her tears. Mommy, I'm home now. I couldn't have done it without you. They both laughed, their hearts filled with happiness. As they left the airport together, Tobe couldn't stop smiling. It felt so good to be back home, surrounded by the love and warmth of his mother. When they got home, Mrs. Obianuju had prepared Tobe's favorite dishes. The house was filled with the delicious aroma of freshly cooked food, and Tobe's stomach rumbled in anticipation. "Mommy, this smells amazing," Tobe said as he sat down at the dining table. "I knew you would be hungry after such a long journey," Mrs. Obianuju replied, placing a big plate of jollof rice and fried plantains in front of him. "Eat, my son. You have worked so hard. You deserve it." Tobe wasted no time and began eating. The taste of his mother's cooking was like a warm hug. As they ate, they talked about everything that had happened while Tobe was abroad. "Mommy, there's something I want to talk to you about," Tobe said between bites. "What is it, my dear?" his mother asked, curious. "I have been thinking about setting up my own business here in Nigeria," Tobe began, placing his fork down. "While I was abroad, I learned a lot about technology and how it's changing the world. I want to start a fintech company here, something that will help people manage their money better using technology." Mrs. Obianuju listened carefully, nodding her head as Tobe explained his idea. "I also saved up some money while I was working part-time abroad, so I have enough funds to get started." Tobe continued, "I have been doing my research and I think it's a great opportunity." "That's a wonderful idea, Tobe," his mother said, beaming with pride. "You have always been so smart and hardworking. I believe you can do it. I will support you in any way I can." "Thank you, Mommy," Tobe said, smiling. "I'm going to make sure this business is a success. I want to make a difference, not just for us, but for other people too." With his mother's blessings, Tobe began working on his plan. He spent the next few months researching the fintech industry, writing proposals, and meeting with people who had more experience in the field. He sought out mentors who could guide him and help him avoid common mistakes. Tobe worked tirelessly, sometimes staying up late into the night, writing out his ideas and thinking about how he could make his business stand out. He was determined to succeed, not just for himself, also for his mother, who had supported him through everything. One day, after months of planning and preparation, Tobe's dream finally came to life. He officially launched his fintech company, which he named TB Technology Company. It wasn't long before the business began to grow. People loved the services that Tobe's company provided, and soon he started expanding the business to reach more customers. As his business grew, so did his success. Tobe became known as one of the brightest young entrepreneurs in the country. But through it all, he never forgot the most important person in his life, his mother. With the money he earned from his successful business, Tobe decided to rebuild his mother's maternal home in Aani. The house where his mother had grown up was old and in need of repairs. So, Tobe built a beautiful new house for her. He wanted to make sure she was comfortable and happy. "Mommy, I want to build a beautiful house for you," Tobe said one day, surprising his mother with the news. Mrs. Obianuju was speechless. "Tobe, you didn't have to do that." "I want to, Mommy," Tobe replied, smiling. "You have done so much for me, and now it's my turn to take care of you." Tears filled Mrs. Obianuju's eyes once again, but this time they were tears of joy. "Thank you, my son. I'm so proud of the man you have become." That wasn't all. Tobe also built a beautiful house for himself in the city. It was a large modern house with all the things he had dreamed of having. However, no matter how big and beautiful his house was, Tobe always made time for his mother. She would often come to visit him in the city, and they would spend hours talking and laughing together. "Mommy, remember the time I got lost at the airport when I first arrived abroad?" Tobe would say, sharing stories from his time away. His mother would laugh. "Oh, Tobe, I was so worried that day. But look at you now. You have come such a long way." They would sit together, eating meals and reminiscing about the past. Tobe would tell his mother everything that had happened during his years abroad, from the new friends he made to the challenges he faced, and each time he would laugh and be happy, knowing that they had come through all the difficulties together. Tobe's life had changed so much since the day when it was just him and his mother struggling to make ends meet. Now, they are both successful in their own ways. Tobe with his thriving fintech business, and Mrs. Obianuju with her expanding salon business. Through it all, they remained close, always supporting and loving each other. Tobe knew that he owed his success to his mother's love and encouragement, and he was determined to continue making her proud for the rest of his life. After several years of living in Nigeria and establishing himself, Tobe had become very successful. His fintech company, TB Technology, was thriving. His businesses were doing well, and he had everything a man could want: a beautiful house, several cars, and the freedom to do as he pleased. Life was good, and his hard work had paid off. However, there was one thing that Tobe's mother, Mrs. Obianuju, was growing more and more concerned about. Tobe had reached an age where most of his friends were married with families of their own. But Tobe, despite all his success, was still single. Mrs. Obianuju had always dreamed of the day she would see her son happily married and starting a family. And now that his business was flourishing, she believed it was the perfect time for Tobe to settle down. One afternoon, during one of her regular visits to his house in the city, she decided to bring up the topic of marriage. Tobe, she began, sitting comfortably in his living room with a cup of tea in her hand. "Don't you think it's time for you to get married?" Tobe, who was seated across from her, smiled. He had been expecting this conversation. His mother had been hinting at it for some time, but today she seemed more serious. "Mommy," Tobe said with a chuckle, "you know I have been focused on my business. I haven't really had the time to think about marriage yet." Mrs. Obianuju raised her eyebrows and gave him a look. "Tobe, your business is doing well now. You have a beautiful house, cars, everything a man needs. What else are you waiting for? What more could you possibly be looking for?" Tobe smiled again, knowing his mother was not going to let the topic go easily. "It's not that I don't want to get married, Mommy. I just haven't found the right person yet. I've been back in Nigeria for a few years, but I've spent most of that time building my business. I haven't had much time to meet someone." Mrs. Obianuju sighed and shook her head. "Tobe, you're not getting any younger. You have achieved so much, and I'm proud of you. But it's time to settle down. You need a wife, someone to share your life with, and to build a family." Tobe leaned back in his chair and nodded. He understood his mother's concern, but marriage wasn't something he wanted to rush into. "Mommy, I agree with you," Tobe said softly. "I don't want to get married someday, but I need to take my time. I don't want to rush into it. Marriage is a big decision, and I need to be sure I'm choosing the right person." Mrs. Obianuju nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that, my son, but you can't wait forever. You need to find someone and start a family. What are you going to do? Wait until you are old?" Tobe laughed, knowing his mother was just being playful. "Mommy, I promise I won't wait that long. I just want to make sure when I do get married, it's to the right person. I will take my time, but I won't wait forever. I promise." His mother smiled, feeling a little more at ease. "All right, but don't take too long. I want to see my grandchildren before I'm too old to run after them." They both laughed, and the conversation shifted to other topics. But Tobe knew this wasn't the last time his mother would bring up the subject of marriage. She had a way of gently reminding him every now and then. A few weeks later, during another visit, Mrs. Obianuju decided to try again. "Tobe," she said casually while they were having lunch, Do you remember that girl, Chidera? You used to play with her when you were little. She's all grown up now and she's very beautiful. Tobe paused and looked at his mother, already guessing where this conversation was headed. Mommy, he said smiling, are you trying to set me up with someone? His mother smiled innocently. Set you up? No, no, no. I'm just saying, Chidera is a nice girl and I thought maybe you would like to meet her again. She's doing very well for herself too. Tobe shook his head and laughed. Mommy, if you're trying to matchmake me with someone, it's not going to work. I want to find my wife by myself, not through an arrangement. His mother chuckled. I was just playing with you, my dear. But think about it. You never know, you might like her. He laughed about it, and the conversation moved on. But Tobe knew his mother wasn't giving up that easily. She was determined to see him married, and he had a feeling this wasn't the last time she would mention it. A few weeks later, during another visit, Mrs. Obianuju brought up the topic again. This time, she mentioned another young woman she knew. Tobe, I have a friend who has a very beautiful daughter, she said casually while they were sitting in the living room. She's very successful too. Maybe you would like to meet her? Tobe sighed and gave his mother a playful look. Mommy, again? His mother laughed. What? I'm just suggesting. You never know. You might like her. Tobe shook his head. Mommy, I told you before, I'm not interested in any setups. I'll find my wife on my own. His mother raised her hands in mock surrender. Alright, I will stop. But you can't blame a mother for trying. They both laughed, and the conversation once again shifted to something else. But as the days went by, Mrs. Obianuju kept finding little ways to bring up the subject of marriage. Sometimes it was a gentle hint, and other times she would jokingly suggest another young woman she knew. Tobe, there is this girl I know, she's very smart, and she comes from a good family. She would say with a twinkle in her eye, Mommy, let me be. Tobe would reply laughing, I will find my wife when the time is right. And so, the back and forth continued. Each time, Tobe would laugh it off, and his mother would smile, knowing that eventually he would find someone. But deep down, Tobe knew that his mother's words were starting to make him think more seriously about marriage. He had spent so much time focusing on his career and building his business that he hadn't given much thought to starting a family. One evening, after his mother had left, Tobe sat alone in his living room, thinking about the conversation. He knew she was right. He was at the stage in his life where settling down was the next big step, but he didn't want to rush it. He wanted to take his time and make sure that when he did get married, it would be with someone who truly understood him and shared his dreams for the future. I will find her when the time is right. Tobe whispered to himself, I just need to be patient. And with that thought, he smiled and decided to focus on enjoying the present, knowing that when the right person came along, he would know. One day, after a long and tiring day at work, Tobe felt completely drained. Running his company, TB Technology, was rewarding, but it came with many responsibilities that could be overwhelming at times. He needed a break, a moment to himself to relax and clear his mind from all the stress that had piled up throughout the day. So instead of heading straight home, Tobe decided to stop by a nearby lounge to cool off. The lounge was quiet and peaceful, with soft music playing in the background. The dim lighting gave it a calm and cozy feel, just what Tobe needed to unwind. He found a seat in a corner, away from the noise of the bar area, and ordered a glass of juice. He wasn't in the mood for anything strong, but something light and refreshing. As he sipped his juice, he tried to let go of the thoughts of work, allowing his mind to relax. Just as Tobe was starting to feel more at ease, the door to the lounge opened and in walked a woman who immediately caught his attention. She was tall, beautiful, and confident. Her name, though Tobe didn't know it yet, was Dorathy. She moved with elegance, her smooth dark skin glowing under the lounge's dim light. Her presence seemed to draw the eyes of everyone around her, and Tobe was no exception. He found himself mesmerized by her beauty. Dorathy made her way to the bar where she ordered a drink, and she stood there waiting to pay. Tobe couldn't resist the urge to approach her. Something about her presence made him want to get to know her, and before he knew it, he was on his feet, walking towards the bar. "Excuse me," Tobe said politely, flashing a friendly smile. "Let me take care of that for you. Your drink is on me." Dorathy turned to him, a bit surprised by the offer. She looked at him with a curious smile and raised an eyebrow playfully. "Wow, are you serious?" she asked, clearly intrigued by his gesture. Tobe nodded, still smiling. "Yes, I'm serious. It's the least I can do." "Well, thank you," Dorathy replied, now smiling warmly. "That's very kind of you." "You're welcome," Tobe said. "I'm sitting over there." He gestured towards the corner where he had been sitting. "If you're not in a hurry, I would love for you to join me." Dorathy hesitated for a moment, then looked around the lounge. "Are you sure you're not waiting for someone?" she asked playfully. "How could a handsome man like you come in here and sit alone?" Tobe chuckled at her question. "And what about you?" he asked, turning the question back on her. "How does a beautiful lady like yourself walk into a lounge and order a drink all by yourself?" Dorathy grinned, realizing that Tobe had turned the question around. "Ouch," she said, laughing softly. "Okay, you got me there." They both laughed, and Dorathy agreed to join him. They walked back to Tobe's table and sat together. From the moment they started talking, it felt as if they had known each other for years. The conversation flowed naturally, and they found themselves laughing and joking as if they were old friends. "I actually just returned to Nigeria recently," Dorathy said after a while, looking back in her chair. "I have been living abroad for years, and I have done quite well for myself. Honestly, I wouldn't normally be eating at a place like this. It's a bit too simple for me," she added, with a hint of pride. Tobe smiled politely, sensing that she was exaggerating a bit. "That's impressive," he said, playing along. "It must feel good to be back home." "Oh, it does," Dorathy replied, nodding. "I have missed Nigeria. Or enough about me. What about you? You don't look like someone who spends his days lounging around either." "What do you do?" Tobe took a sip of his juice before answering. "I studied abroad as well," he began. "I came back to Nigeria a few years ago and started my own business. I run a company called TB Technology." Dorathy's eyes widened with surprise, and she looked genuinely impressed. "Wait, TB Technology? I've heard so much about that company. It's really popular. You are the CEO?" Tobe nodded, feeling a bit shy about the attention. "Yes, that's me." Dorathy leaned forward, clearly impressed. "Wow, you must be very proud of yourself. That's an amazing achievement." "Thank you," Tobe said, smiling. "It's been a lot of hard work, but I'm happy with how far we have come." They continued chatting, and Dorathy seemed eager to impress Tobe with stories of her own. She talked about how she had returned to Nigeria because she was well established abroad and wanted to learn more about the country. Tobe looked really impressed with her reasons to come back to Nigeria, wished her good luck while smiling. "Thank you," Dorathy replied with a smile. "About it, I just needed a change from the life abroad." Their conversation continued, and Tobe found himself enjoying Dorathy's company more and more. She had a lively personality. He found her fun to talk to. They laughed and shared stories about their experiences. And the more they talked, the more comfortable they became with each other. Eventually, it was time for them to leave. Both stood up and walked outside together, chatting as they made their way to the parking lot. "It was really nice talking to you tonight," Tobe said warmly as they reached his car. "Same here," Dorathy replied with a smile. "Thanks again for the drinks." As Tobe was about to get into his car, Dorathy stopped him. "Wait a minute," she said with a playful grin. "Aren't you forgetting something?" Tobe looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "You didn't give me your number," Dorathy said, pretending to be offended. "What if I never see you again? You don't want to lose me, do you?" Tobe laughed, realizing she was right. "Ah, I'm so sorry. Here, let me give you my number." They exchanged numbers, and Dorathy immediately called his phone to make sure it was correct. "Okay, it went through," she said with a satisfied smile. "Now, we can't lose each other." Tobe smiled. "Save my contact as Tobe, and you can save mine as Dorathy," she replied with a grin. Both laughed, waved goodbye, and got into their cars. That wasn't the end of their conversation for the night. As soon as Tobe got home, he hadn't even sat down when his phone rang. It was Dorathy. "Hey, Tobe," she said cheerfully when he answered. "I just wanted to make sure you got home safely." Tobe smiled, pleasantly surprised by her call. "I just got him. Thanks for checking up on me. Did you get home safely too?" "Yes, I did," Dorathy replied. "I had a really nice time today. It was fun talking to you." "Same here," Tobe said. "It was a great evening. I'm glad we met." They continued chatting on the phone, laughing and sharing more stories late into the night. After what felt like hours, Tobe finally glanced at the time. "I should probably get some sleep," he said with a chuckle. "I have work tomorrow and I don't want to be late." "Okay," Dorathy replied. "We'll chat again tomorrow. Good night, Tobe." "Good night, Dorathy," Tobe said with a smile. As Tobe lay in bed that night, he thought about the evening's event and the unexpected connection he had made with Dorathy. It was nice to meet someone new and share a fun conversation after such a long day. He felt a sense of calm as he drifted off to sleep, looking forward to whatever came next. The next day, as Tobe was getting ready for another busy day at work, his phone rang. It was Dorathy calling. He smiled when he saw her name on the screen, remembering the fun they had the night before. He answered the call, curious about what she had to say. "Hello, Dorathy," Tobe greeted warmly. "Hey, Tobe," she replied, her voice cheerful. "I hope I'm not bothering you. I just wanted to ask if you have any free time today." Tobe thought for a moment. His schedule was packed, but as the boss, he had the freedom to manage his time. "I can spare 30 minutes to an hour," he said. Then with a playful tone he added, "But since I'm the boss, I could give you 2 hours if you want." Dorathy laughed on the other end of the line. "Oh, look at you, Mr. Big Boss, giving out extra time. That's sweet of you. 2 hours sounds perfect." "Great. When would you like to meet?" Tobe asked. Dorathy thought for a moment. "How about you pick the place?" "Well, there's this restaurant I usually eat at every afternoon," Tobe suggested. "It's nice and quiet. Why don't we meet there?" "That sounds perfect," Dorathy agreed. "I will see you there soon." After ending the call, Tobe quickly finished his morning tasks and made his way to the restaurant. He was curious to see Dorathy again. He had a way of capturing his attention, and even though he suspected she wasn't always being completely honest about her life, there was something about her that intrigued him. When Tobe arrived at the restaurant, he found a quiet table near the window and sat there. He ordered a drink while waiting for Dorathy. Not long after, she arrived, looking as stunning as ever. She walked in confidently, wearing a bright smile on her face. "Tobe," she called out when she spotted him. She walked over to the table and they greeted each other with a friendly hug. "You are right. This place is nice," Dorathy said, taking a seat. "I like the atmosphere." "I'm glad you like it," Tobe replied. "I come here almost every day for lunch. The food is great and is always peaceful." They both ordered their meals and soon after the conversation began to flow. Dorathy was full of energy as usual and Tobe couldn't help but be drawn into her lively stories. As they talked, Tobe decided to ask her more about her background. So, since you said you recently returned to Nigeria, what do your parents do? Tobe asked casually. Dorathy face lit up and she leaned forward, ready to tell her story. Oh, my dad is a big businessman in the UK, she began, her voice full of pride. He owns a company there and has branches in America, Germany, and France. He's very successful. Tobe raised his eyebrows, impressed by her words. Wow, that's amazing, he said. Your dad must be really proud of everything he has accomplished. Oh, he is, Dorathy nodded enthusiastically. He has worked so hard to build his empire. And my mom, she's a classic woman, very elegant. She owns a successful makeup label brand. In fact, most of the high quality makeup used in Nigeria is produced by her company. Tobe nodded along, but deep down, he wasn't sure how much of Dorathy's story was true. He didn't recognize the company names she mentioned, but he didn't want to question her. Instead, he decided to focus on their conversation. That's incredible, Tobe said, smiling. It sounds like your family is very accomplished. What about you? What are your plans here in Nigeria now that you have returned? Dorathy took a sip of her drink and then smiled. Well, I'm planning to start my own business here, he said. I want to establish a hair brand, selling human hair, wigs, and everything related to beauty. That's one of the reasons I came back to Nigeria. I needed a change from life abroad and I want to make a name for myself here. Tobe was impressed, or at least he pretended to be. That sounds like a fantastic idea. The beauty industry is huge here in Nigeria. I'm sure you'll be very successful. Thank you, Dorathy replied, her eyes shining. I'm really excited about it. It's a big step for me, but I'm confident it will work out. Tobe nodded in approval. I'm proud of you, Dorathy. It's not easy to start something new, but with your determination, I believe you will do great. Dorathy smiled at his words of encouragement. Thank you, Tobe. That means a lot to me. As the conversation continued, Dorathy asked Tobe more about his own life. So, what about you? Do you have any siblings? She asked. No, it's just me and my mom, Tobe replied. She's doing well though. I'm lucky to have her. That's sweet, Dorathy said. It must be nice having that close bond with your mom. It is, Tobe agreed. She has always been there for me and I do my best to make her proud. They continued talking, and the more they spoke, the more comfortable they became with each other. Dorathy shared more stories about her life abroad, boasting about her experiences and the luxurious lifestyle she claimed to have lived. Though Tobe wasn't entirely convinced that everything she said was true, he enjoyed listening to her and appreciating her confidence. So, do you have any siblings? Tobe asked after a while. Oh yes, Dorathy said, quickly jumping into another story. I have 2 siblings. My older sister is married to a white man and they live in the UK. My brother is helping my dad run his companies. We are all very close. Tobe nodded, listening intently. That sounds nice. It must be great having a big family like that. It is, Dorathy said, smiling. We are all very supportive of each other. As the afternoon went on, Tobe and Dorathy continued their conversation, enjoying each other's company. They laughed, shared stories, and talked about their dreams and ambitions. Tobe found himself drawn to Dorathy's vibrant personality, even though he could sense that she wasn't always being completely honest. There was something about her that kept him interested, and he enjoyed spending time with her. Over the next few days, Tobe and Dorathy began meeting up more often. They would go to different restaurants and lounges, spending time together and getting to know each other better. Their conversations flowed easily, and they always found something to laugh about. Tobe appreciated the change of pace. After long days at work, it was refreshing to spend time with someone who brought a little fun and excitement into his life. Dorathy's lively stories and bold personality kept him entertained, and he enjoyed their growing friendship. As they continued to see each other, Tobe began to wonder where things might lead. He was intrigued by Dorathy, and while he didn't know everything about her, he found her company enjoyable. Whether they were at a restaurant sharing a meal or simply chatting over drinks, Tobe felt a sense of peace when he was with her. One day, while Tobe and Dorathy were chatting at their usual spot, a quiet corner in their favorite restaurant, Tobe found himself feeling more nervous than usual. He had been spending a lot of time with Dorathy lately, and the more time they spent together, the more certain he became of his feelings for her. His heart had grown fond of her, and he knew he needed to tell her how he felt. Dorathy was sitting across him, talking animatedly about her plans for the future. Tobe listened, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't stop thinking about how he was going to express his feelings to her. He knew he had to do it now or risk never finding the right moment. Taking a deep breath, Tobe interrupted her gently. Dorathy, there's something I need to tell you, he said, his voice a little shaky. Dorathy looked up from her plate, curiosity flashing in her eyes. What is it, Tobe? She asked, her tone soft and encouraging. Tobe hesitated for a moment before finally saying, I have fallen in love with you. For a few seconds, there was silence. Dorathy stared at him, processing his words. Then, to Tobe's relief, a smile slowly spread across her face. Tobe, she said softly, I have fallen in love with you too. Hearing those words made Tobe's heart soar. He reached across the table and took her hand in his, feeling a wave of happiness wash over him. I'm so glad to hear that, Tobe said with a smile. I have been waiting for the right moment to tell you how I feel, and I'm happy to know we feel the same. They sat there for a moment, holding hands and smiling at each other, the rest of the world fading away as they basked in their shared feelings. After a few moments, they both agreed that they should give their relationship a chance and see where it would lead. From that day forward, Dorathy started visiting Tobe's house more often. She would come over on weekends and spend time with him, cooking meals, watching movies, and enjoying each other's company. Tobe felt so comfortable with her that he gave her a spare key to his house. Here, Tobe said one afternoon as he handed Dorathy the key, just in case I'm not around, you can let yourself in and make yourself comfortable. Dorathy smiled and she accepted the key. Thank you, Tobe. I'll take good care of it. With the key in hand, Dorathy had full access to Tobe's home. She would often come over when Tobe was at work, cooking delicious meals and making the house feel even more like home. Tobe loved coming back from work to the smell of freshly cooked food and seeing Dorathy waiting for him with a smile. As their relationship deepened, Tobe's mother, Mrs. Obianuju, began calling him more frequently. She often asked him if he had found a woman to settle down with. Tobe, his mother would say over the phone, have you found a woman yet? I'm getting impatient, you know. I want to meet your future wife soon. Tobe always responded with the same answer, keeping his mother in suspense. Mommy, don't worry. I have a surprise for you. I'm going to shock you very soon. His mother, curious as ever, would ask, what kind of surprise, Tobe? You need to tell me in advance so I can prepare myself. Tobe would chuckle and say, no problem, Mommy. You'll find out soon enough. As Dorathy continued to visit Tobe's house, their relationship grew stronger. Then, one evening, Tobe decided it was time to take things a step further. He had been thinking about proposing to Dorathy, and he felt the moment was right. He took her to a beautiful lounge one night, one of their favorite spots. The lights were soft and the atmosphere was perfect. As they sat down, enjoying their drink and talking as usual, Tobe suddenly got down on one knee and pulled out a small box. Dorathy, he began, looking up at her with love in his eyes. You have made me the happiest man in the world these past few months. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Dorathy's eyes widened in surprise, but then a big smile spread across her face. Yes, Tobe, I will marry you, she exclaimed, her voice filled with joy. Tobe slipped the ring onto her finger and they embraced, both of them excited for what the future held. Later that night, after Dorathy had gone home, Tobe decided it was time to tell his mother the big news. He called her, eager to share the happy moment. "Mommy," Tobe said when his mother picked up the phone, "I have some news for you." "Tobe, what's going on?" his mother asked, sensing the excitement in his voice. "I proposed to Dorathy tonight," Tobe announced, smiling to himself as he said it. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before the mother responded, her voice filled with confusion. "Who is Dorathy?" Tobe chuckled. "She's the woman I've been seeing, Mommy. I've been keeping it a secret, but I will introduce you to her very soon." But Tobe's mother was full of questions. "What if she isn't good enough for you, Tobe? Do you know her well enough? What if she doesn't truly love you? Did you do any research on her background?" Tobe tried to calm his mother's worries. "Mommy, Dorathy is a good person. She's kind, caring, and well-mannered. I promise you, you will love her when you meet her." His mother sighed. "All right, Tobe, but please be careful. Don't do anything stupid and make sure she's the right one for you. And don't get her pregnant before the wedding. Is she living in your house already?" Tobe quickly reassured his mother. "No, Mommy, she's not living in my house. She's a responsible woman and I have made sure everything is proper. You will meet her soon and I know you will love her." "Seeing is believing, Tobe," his mother said firmly. "I won't say anything more until I meet her myself." "All right, Mommy," Tobe replied, smiling. "You will meet her very soon." As the days went by, things between Tobe and Dorathy seemed to be going well. However, Dorathy soon started asking Tobe about the next steps in their relationship. She wanted to know when they would start planning the wedding. "Tobe, when are we going to plan our wedding?" she asked. Tobe looked at her thoughtfully and replied, "I think we should take it slow, Dorathy. We don't need to rush into it. We have only known each other for a few months now. And while I love you, I think we should spend more time getting to know each other before we get married." Dorathy frowned slightly. "But you already know me, Tobe. What else is there to know? Don't you trust me?" Tobe reached out and took her hand. "Of course I trust you, my love. You are an amazing person. But I want us to be sure that we are ready for this big step. Marriage is a huge commitment and I want to make sure we are both fully prepared." Dorathy sighed but nodded. "Okay, Tobe, I understand. We will take it slow." And with that, they agreed to continue spending time together and deepening their bond, knowing that when the time was right, their wedding would come. One morning, as Tobe was rushing out the door, adjusting his tie and gathering his things for work, he was surprised to see someone standing at his doorstep. It was his mother, Mrs. Obianuju, standing there with a smile on her face. Tobe hadn't expected her, and he was both surprised and a bit confused. "Mommy," he exclaimed, looking at her with wide eyes. "You didn't tell me you were coming." His mother folded her arms and gave him a playful look. "Oh, so now I need permission to come to my son's house, eh? Tobe, please, go one side and let me come in. Or is there a woman you are hiding in there?" Tobe laughed, feeling a bit embarrassed. No, Mommy, there is nobody inside," he assured her, stepping aside to let her in. Mrs. Obianuju stepped inside, looking around the house as if inspecting it. She said, nodding. "I thought maybe your fiancée was living with you." "This fiancée you kept telling me about, but I have never even seen her. Tobe, am I supposed to be satisfied with just pictures? Pictures that I can't even eat or talk to. What am I supposed to do with pictures?" Tobe scratched his head, feeling a little guilty. "Mommy, I know you want to meet her in person," he said, "but I'm running late for work. Why don't you go inside, make yourself comfortable, and eat something?" But his mother wasn't having it. She shook her head and said, "No, Tobe, I didn't come here to sit and make myself comfortable. We need to talk, my son. You are the boss, right? If you are late to work, nothing will happen. Nobody will sack you." Tobe sighed, realizing that his mother wasn't going to let him leave without a conversation. "All right, Mommy, but just a few minutes, okay?" he said. guiding her to the living room. They sat down, and Tobe looked at his mother expectantly. "What's on your mind, mommy?" he asked, wondering what was so urgent. His mother leaned in and lowered her voice, as if she were about to reveal a secret. "Tobe, I have a plan," she began, a mischievous sparkle in her eyes. "Since I haven't met your fiancé yet, I want to stay in your house for a little while and pretend to be, well, deaf and dumb." Tobe's eyes widened in surprise. "What? Mommy, why would you do such a thing?" he asked, feeling both amused and shocked. Mrs. Obianuju nodded seriously, her expression firm. "Tobe, I need to know if this girl is truly right for you. I want to see how she behaves when she thinks I can't hear or talk. This is the only way I will know if she is truly a good person. I need to see if she treats people kindly, especially those she thinks can't respond." Tobe was speechless for a moment. "Mommy, this plan is a bit strange," he said, trying to find the right words. "But if it will make you feel better, then okay, I will play along. I really need to get going. I'm already late." His mother nodded, satisfied. Good. Now go to work. I'll be here when you get back. Just remember, don't tell her that I can hear or talk. She should think I'm completely deaf and dumb." Tobe shook his head, smiling. "All right, mommy, I'll play along. But please, don't cause too much trouble." With that, he quickly gathered his things and rushed out the door, leaving his mother to her plan. As soon as he left, Mrs. Obianuju rolled up her sleeves and headed to the kitchen. She started cooking, preparing a delicious meal, and then set about cleaning the house. She wanted everything to look spotless for when Tobe's fiancé arrived. A little while later, Dorathy arrived at Tobe's home. She was in high spirits, expecting a nice, relaxing day. But as she entered the living room, she was startled to see an older woman she didn't recognize standing there. "Who are you?" Dorathy asked, looking the woman up and down. The woman didn't respond. She simply continued with her cleaning, ignoring Dorathy completely. Dorathy frowned, very annoyed. "Excuse me, can't you hear me?" she said, raising her voice. "You dirty maid, what's wrong with you? Am I not talking to you?" Still, Mrs. Obianuju pretended not to hear a word, continuing with her cleaning as if Dorathy wasn't even there. Dorathy became even more irritated. "Where is Tobe? And where on earth did he find you? Which gutter did Tobe pick you from?" she muttered to herself, shaking her head in disbelief. "I can't believe this nonsense." As she continued complaining, the door suddenly opened and Tobe walked in. Dorathy immediately turned to him, her face full of frustration. "Baby," she exclaimed, pointing at his mother. "Who is this? Who is this dirty old woman you brought here?" Tobe glanced between Dorathy and his mother, unsure of what had happened in his absence. He was about to answer when Dorathy continued. "If you needed a maid, why didn't you just tell me? I know people who could work as maids, not this." Tobe took a deep breath, preparing himself to follow his mother's plan. "Dorathy," he said calmly, "this is my mom." Dorathy's eyes widened, but she looked completely shocked. "Your mother?" she stammered, her face turning red. Tobe nodded. "Yes, Dorathy, my mother, but she's deaf and dumb," he added, hoping to keep the charade going. Hearing this, Dorathy looked relieved, thinking that perhaps Tobe's mother hadn't heard all the rude things she had said. She quickly turned to Mrs. Obianuju, now smiling sheepishly. "Oh, your mother," she said, forcing a nervous smile. "So nice to meet you, ma'am," she said, trying to sound sweet. Tobe could barely hide his own emotions, but he kept his face calm. "Dorathy, why don't you go to the room? I'll be with you in a minute," he said, trying to keep her calm. Dorathy nodded, giving Tobe a quick kiss on the cheek before disappearing into the room. Once she was out of sight, Tobe turned to his mother, who looked less than pleased. "Mommy, what happened here?" Tobe asked quietly, not wanting Dorathy to overhear. Mrs. Obianuju sighed, shaking her head. "Don't worry about it, my son," she said. "Just go to her. We will talk about it later." Tobe could tell that his mother wasn't happy, but he knew better than to push her for answers right then. Alright, mommy, I'll check on her, but we'll talk later. He went to the room where Dorathy was sitting, trying to look innocent and calm. Tobe sat down next to her and they started talking, but in the back of his mind, he couldn't stop thinking about the strange situation he had just witnessed. He knew his mother was keeping something from him, and he wondered what she had observed that made her so quiet. As the day went on, Tobe tried to act normal around Dorathy, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He could see that his mother was observing everything, and he knew that soon enough, she would have a lot to say about his choice of fiancé. Later that evening, Tobe, his mother, and Dorathy sat down for dinner. Mrs. Obianuju had prepared a delicious meal, and the room was filled with rich aroma of home-cooked food. Tobe looked pleased as he took his first bite, nodding in appreciation. "Mommy, this is amazing," Tobe said, smiling at his mother. "You have outdone yourself tonight." Mrs. Obianuju gave a gentle smile, still keeping up her act, pretending to be unable to hear or speak. Dorathy, who was also enjoying the food, turned to Tobe with a grin. "Oh, baby, your mommy can cook? This is so delicious," she said, smiling widely. She then looked over at Tobe's mother, giving her a slightly forced compliment. "Mama, you really know how to cook, oh," she said loudly, almost as if she thought speaking louder would make her words somehow reach Mrs. Obianuju. Mrs. Obianuju simply stared at Dorathy with a blank expression, not reacting to her words. Just as she had planned, Tobe, trying to maintain the act, gave his mother a little nudge, as if to encourage her to respond. She gave him a small smile in return, though it was clear to Tobe that she wasn't very pleased. However, he kept quiet, not wanting to raise any suspicion. As his mother smiled, Dorathy was busy in her own thoughts, thinking rather unkind things about the woman in front of her. In her mind, she thought, "Look at this woman. Who is laughing with this one? Why am I even praising her food? Deaf and dumb, imagine." After they finished eating, the three of them got up from the table. Tobe and Dorathy headed to the bedroom to talk for a bit before bed. As they settled in, Dorathy seemed a bit uneasy, and Tobe noticed. "What's on your mind?" Tobe asked her, sensing that she had something to say. Dorathy hesitated for a moment before finally speaking. "Are you sure your mother likes me?" she asked, a bit unsure. "I mean, she hasn't really said anything, but I don't know. I hope she likes me." Tobe smiled reassuringly. "Oh, Dorathy, don't worry. My mother likes you," he said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "She can't hear or talk, so sometimes it might feel like she's distant, but she's a loving woman. Believe me, if she didn't like you, I would know." Dorathy nodded, looking somewhat relieved. "Alright, I just wanted to make sure. I hope everything goes smoothly with her." The next morning, Tobe got up early to get ready for work. After dressing up, he turned to Dorathy before leaving. "Take care of the house and please make sure my mom has everything she needs," he said, looking at her kindly. "If she needs anything, attend to her, okay?" Dorathy nodded, giving him a smile. "Of course, baby. Don't worry. I'll take care of everything." Tobe smiled, feeling grateful, then waved goodbye as he left for work. Mrs. Obianuju was sitting in the living room, watching the television. The morning sun cast a warm glow across the room, and she seemed perfectly content. However, the peaceful scene was soon interrupted when Dorathy entered the room. Dorathy paused, looking at Tobe's mother with a dismissive glance. She then walked into the kitchen to get herself a glass of juice and a plate of food. After preparing her drink and food, she came back to the living room and sat down, casually ignoring Mrs. Obianuju as if she wasn't even there. After a few minutes, Dorathy began talking to herself, her voice filled with irritation. "Look at this woman," she muttered, eyeing Tobe's mother. "What is she even watching? Someone who is deaf and dumb. How is she even understanding anything? Look at the way she is staring at the TV like a dummy." She took a sip of her juice and continued muttering under her breath. "Oh, she's lucky. If not for the subtitles on the screen, what will she even be looking at?" Mrs. Obianuju sat there, pretending not to hear a single word Dorathy was saying. She kept her gaze on the television, acting completely unaware of Dorathy's hurtful words. Feeling bored, Dorathy pulled out her phone and called a friend, speaking loudly and carelessly. She didn't seem to care that Tobe's mother was sitting right there, listening to everything. "Hey girl," Dorathy said excitedly as her friend answered the call. "Guess where I am right now? I'm at my fiancé's house, and you won't believe the person I found here." Her friend asked her to continue, and Dorathy laughed. "His mother." "Yes, girl, his mother, but she's deaf and dumb. Can you imagine? A dirty-looking deaf and dumb woman." Her friend gasped, and they both laughed, completely ignoring Mrs. Obianuju's presence. "Yes, that's his mother," Dorathy continued, rolling her eyes. "And you know what? Tobe is not even that handsome. I mean, he's a decent looking, but not my type. I'm only with him because he's rich. Do you think I would marry into a family like this if not for his money? God forbid." She laughed loudly, and her friend joined in. The two of them enjoyed their gossip. As Dorathy spoke, Mrs. Obianuju remained silent, pretending to focus on the TV. She heard every word Dorathy said, but she didn't react, choosing instead to keep up her act. After finishing her call, Dorathy ended the conversation with a laugh, then turned to look at Tobe's mother. She gave her a fake smile and said, "Oh mama, you are still here?" She smiled sweetly, but in her mind she was thinking, "Look at this foolish woman, smiling with me as if we are friends. Nonsense." Mrs. Obianuju gave a polite smile in return, still playing her role as the quiet, unaware woman. Over the next few days, Dorathy continued with her careless behavior. She would insult Tobe's mother, muttering rude comments under her breath or talking about her on the phone with her friends, completely unaware that Mrs. Obianuju was listening to everything. Through it all, Mrs. Obianuju kept her cool, watching carefully as Dorathy revealed her true colors. She remained patient, determined to gather all the information she needed before finally revealing the truth to her son. One morning, Tobe's mother was in the kitchen cooking a big pot of soup. She was focused on preparing the ingredients, humming a tune to herself as the aroma filled the kitchen. After a while, she realized she needed to grab something from the pantry, so she left the pot simmering on the stove. When she returned, she froze at the doorway, her eyes widening in shock. There, standing by the stove, was Dorathy. She was pouring water into the pot of soup, diluting it without any hesitation. She glanced over her shoulder and saw Tobe's mother watching her. Dorathy smiled, looking at her with a mocking expression. "Oh, Mama, water, water," she said in a tone that was anything but respectful. Mrs. Obianuju stood there, keeping up her act of being unable to hear or talk. She watched as Dorathy hissed in annoyance, muttering under her breath, "Look at this woman thinking she can claim my kitchen, my husband to be's house, and yet every time she is in here cooking her head off. Well, let's see if she dares to come back in here after this. Don't even look at me before I put my hand in your eye." Dorathy's words were harsh and cruel, but Mrs. Obianuju didn't flinch. She kept her face expressionless, determined not to react. She wanted to see how far Dorathy would go when she thought no one could hear her. In her mind, Mrs. Obianuju thought to herself, "I want my son. This is only the beginning. I'll get the proof I need." The days went on, and each day Dorathy's behavior grew worse. Whenever Tobe wasn't home, Dorathy would show her true colors, making rude comments, taking over the kitchen, and even treating Tobe's mother with complete disrespect. One day, while Mrs. Obianuju was cleaning up in the living room, she overheard Dorathy talking on the phone with someone named Jack. Dorathy didn't seem to care that Tobe's mother was there. "Yes, Jack," she said, laughing softly. "Very soon, I'm getting everything, the document, the ATM cards, everything will be ours. Just wait a little longer." Mrs. Obianuju pretended to be busy with the cleaning, her face calm, but inside, she was more alert than ever, catching every word Dorathy said. As soon as Tobe returned home from work that evening, his mother's face would return to a warm smile. She didn't give any hint of what she had heard or seen. Tobe, noticing that his mother seemed quiet, would often pull her aside and ask her if she had observed anything strange. "Mommy, is there anything you have noticed?" Tobe would ask, concern in his voice. His mother would smile and dismiss his worries. "Not yet, my son. I am still gathering my evidence," she would say calmly, patting his shoulder. Meanwhile, Dorathy became bolder. She began sneaking around Tobe's room, searching for important documents. She would carefully go through his drawers, looking for bank statements or other important papers, hoping to find something valuable. Mrs. Obianuju, who often saw Dorathy's sneaky behavior, would follow her quietly, making mental notes of everything she witnessed. One day, Mr. Obianuju entered Tobe's room as Dorathy was rummaging through his things. Dorathy turned around and glared at her. "What are you doing here?" Dorathy snapped. "Can't you go away? Go sit somewhere else, old woman." Mr. Obianuju gave her a blank look and quietly left the room, keeping up her act. She knew the time to reveal everything was getting closer, but she wanted to make sure she had all the proof she needed. Finally, one evening, while they were all having dinner, Mr. Obianuju decided that it was time to end the charade. She had witnessed enough, and she was ready to expose Dorathy for who she truly was. As they sat around the dinner table, Dorathy was busy praising the food, trying to impress Tobe. "Oh baby, this food is so delicious. Mama really outdid herself," she said, smiling sweetly. Tobe smiled, pleased that Dorathy seemed to be getting along with his mother. But just as Dorathy was about to say something else, Mrs. Obianuju put down her fork and cleared her throat. Everyone at the table froze. Dorathy's eyes widened as she looked at Tobe's mother, suddenly realizing that she had just spoken. "Mama, you can talk?" Dorathy stammered, her face turning pale. Mrs. Obianuju looked at her calmly. "Yes, Dorathy," she said, her voice firm. "I can talk and I can hear too. I have heard every single word you have said since the day I arrived. All your insults, your plans with Jack, and your intentions towards my son. I have recorded everything." Dorathy's face went from pale to bright red. She tried to stammer out a reply, but words failed her. Tobe, who had been sitting quietly, was in shock. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Mrs. Obianuju reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, handing it to Tobe. "Here, my son, listen to the recordings for yourself. This is the woman you thought you loved." Tobe took the phone and began listening to the recordings, his face growing darker with every passing second. He could hear Dorathy's voice clearly, insulting his mother, talking to her boyfriend about stealing his money, and admitting that she didn't love him. After listening to enough, Tobe put the phone down and looked at Dorathy, his expression filled with anger and disappointment. "Dorathy," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "is this true? Did you really lie to me about everything?" Dorathy's eyes filled with tears as she realized she had no way out. "Tobe, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean for it to get this far," she said, trying to find an excuse. Mr. Obianuju didn't let her off that easily. "Oh, really? You didn't mean for it to get this far? You planned this from the beginning, and you deceived my son at every turn. You even lied about your family. Your parents are not rich. They live in the village, and they are struggling. And Jack, your boyfriend, has been helping you pull this act with other rich men before you met my son." Dorathy's shoulders slumped as she realized there was no point in denying it anymore. "Yes," she admitted quietly, "everything I did was a lie. I don't love you, Tobe. I was only with you for the money. Jack and I have done this before. Tobe wasn't the first." Tobe clenched his fists, feeling both anger and heartbreak. "Dorathy," he said, his voice filled with hurt, "I loved you. I would have done anything for you. But I see now that I was wrong. I could have had you arrested for this, but because of the love I once had for you, I will let you go. Leave and never show your face here again." Dorathy began crying, begging for forgiveness. "Please, Tobe, don't throw me out. I will change, I promise. I'm so sorry. I will never lie again. Please forgive me." Mrs. Obianuju looked at her firmly. "Dorathy, it's time you learned a lesson. Change your ways before it's too late. Leave now and don't come back." With no other option, Dorathy wiped her tears, gathered her things, and left the house, leaving Tobe and his mother behind. After Dorathy left, Tobe was heartbroken. He had trusted her, and she had betrayed him. He decided he needed time to heal, so he focused on his work, determined to move on. His mother apologized for pressuring him into finding a wife quickly, and she promised to let him take his time from now on. Months passed, and Tobe continued working hard, slowly finding joy in his life again. Then one day, he attended a conference and met a lady named Kemi. She was the manager of a big firm, and they quickly became friends. As they started spending more time together, Tobe couldn't help but feel a connection with Kemi. But after his experience with Dorathy, he was hesitant to trust too quickly, so he began doing background checks on her, wanting to be sure of her intentions. When Kemi discovered what Tobe was doing, she confronted him. "Tobe, what's wrong with you?" she asked, clearly upset. Why would you go to the extent of stalking me? What are you trying to find out that I haven't told you? Tobe sighed, feeling guilty. Kemi, I'm sorry, he said. It's just, I had a heartbreaking experience with someone before, and I didn't mean to doubt you. I just wanted to be sure you are genuine. Kemi looked at him for a moment before softening. I understand, Tobe. It's okay. Just talk to me next time, alright? Tobe nodded, relieved. Thank you, Kemi. Would you be willing to give our relationship a chance? Kemi smiled. I would like that. They began dating, and as time went on, Tobe felt confident that he had finally found someone he could trust. When he took Kemi to meet his mother, Mrs. Obianuju, she welcomed her warmly, sensing the genuine kindness in Kemi's heart. From the moment Kemi entered their home, she treated Tobe's mother with the utmost respect and warmth, helping her with household chores and chatting with her as if they had known each other for years. After spending the afternoon together, Tobe's mother couldn't hide her joy. She turned to Tobe with a big smile and said, My son, this is the one. Kemi is truly a wonderful woman. I can see her honesty and kindness in the way she treats me. You have made a wise choice this time. Mrs. Obianuju reached out and hugged Kemi, her face beaming with pride and joy. Welcome to the family, my dear, she said warmly. Tobe felt his heart swell with happiness as he watched his mother embrace Kemi. It was the start of a new chapter, one filled with trust, respect, and genuine love. Kemi and Tobe soon began preparing for their wedding. Surrounded by their family and friends, we are overjoyed to witness the love and happiness they have found in each other. This story teaches us that honesty is very important in relationships. Dorathy pretended to care for Tobe only to take his money, but her lies were uncovered and she lost his trust. Tobe felt sad, but he learned to be patient and careful when choosing friends. Later, he met Kemi, who was genuine and kind. The story shows that true happiness comes when we treat others with respect and honesty. Lies may seem to work at first, but they often lead to sadness and loss. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Tobe and his mom on African Stories. If you liked it and felt inspired with their journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.